Good afternoon. I'm Judy Geller, Director of MetalCon, and I'm here to wish you a very happy 2023 and welcome you to our first MetalCon Live of the new year. What could be a better way to kick things off than with a conversation on the state of the metal construction industry? What's likely to happen this year and beyond? What new design trends, market conditions, and economic challenges are you going to need to navigate? Our panel of industry experts, including Renee Ramey, Executive Director at the Metal Roofing Alliance, Jeff Henry, Executive Director of the Metal Construction Association, Brent Schipper, Principal at ASK Studio, are joining Paul Deffenbaugh, Editorial Director at Modern Train Communications, to shed some light on these specific issues. Before I hand you off to the experts, I'd like to remind you to mark your calendar for a few upcoming things you're not going to want to miss. On February 8th, our next MetalCon Live will take place. The topic, the big disconnect, the importance of wall-to-roof connections for the air barrier. On March 22nd, sorry about that, MetalCon Live will feature a dedicated program for the future leaders of our industry. And of course, I cannot sign off without reminding you that MetalCon 2023 will take place from October 18th through the 20th at the Las Vegas Convention Center. Go to metalcon.com to sign up to receive early details. You can also follow us on the socials. And finally, just a reminder, if you need technical help during the webinar, just reach out to MetalCon support in the chat box. And don't forget to complete the post-webinar survey so you can earn your credits for today's session. That's it for me. And now over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Judy. Welcome, everyone. I hope everybody's had a great January so far and looking forward to a good 2023. Every year, Metal Construction News publishes a State of the Industry report where we ask industry experts to give us their opinions, their predictions for what's going to happen in 2023. And I've asked three of those folks to join us in a live discussion of what would happen in 2023. If you're interested in seeing the report, it's at metalconstructionnews.com. And what I want to do start with is we're going to start with some broad questions and dig into a bunch of topics on what's going on in the industry, what's going on with labor shortage, what's going on with embodied carbon issues and all kinds of things. But first, I'm going to ask each of the folks to tell us a little bit about themselves so you're familiar with them. Before I do that, I wanted to tell everybody that we're going to take questions. You can send us questions through the chat thing and we'll field them at the end of the discussion. But going in alphabetical order, Jeff Henry, who's the Executive Director of the Metal Construction Association. Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Jeff Henry. I serve as the Executive Director of the Metal Construction Association. I've spent the last 12 years serving different associations, all in the construction industry, with most of them related to metal and construction. So I have been in this capacity since June of 2020, and I look forward to the conversation today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. And Renee, you're the Executive Director of the Metal Roofing Alliance. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, that is who I am for the most part. Been the Executive Director of the MRA for, I think, going on my 6th year, but I've been in the metals industry for, I hate to say it, but over 25 years. So everything from steel mill, converter, paint lines, distribution, service center, straight into this role. So been around a little while, been familiar with MRA and the industry as a whole for quite some time.
Thanks, Renee. Brent, not least, but not last. How did I mess that up? Anyway, last but not least, that's the correct one. I'm on my game here today.
I'm Brent Schipper. I am one of the principals of architectural studio called Ask Studio, and Ask Studio is in Des Moines, Iowa, and we do most of our work in Iowa, but regionally in the Midwest we do work in neighboring states. And I think one of the reasons that I've become associated with MetalCon and some of the other metal-related people on this call is because we use a lot of metal in our architecture, and some of that is just simply because of how well it works and how long it lasts. So we're a fan.
Thanks, Brent. And I'll try to get my brain sorted out so we can have a smooth discussion. I wanted to start with the broadest question of all, and that's for everybody to answer. And Jeff, we'll start with you and then move through. But what are your attitudes about the business environment in 2023? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic about what you're seeing out there? How do you think the metal construction industry is going to fare?
Well, I'm very optimistic, Paul, and thank you. I'm an optimist by nature. That may surprise some people, but, but I am. But I think there's a lot to be encouraged about moving into 2023. We've moved past some of the issues that the industry's had, be it supply chain. We've dealt with the increasing material costs, the inflations. We've seen that starting to level out. We're seeing inventories are returning to higher levels or even higher in some cases. And we're seeing opportunity members report that project backlogs have remained strong. So, they're optimistic about the 2023 and what that will look like. Is everything rosy? No, but overall, I think it'll be another solid year for metal and construction.
Renee, MRA is predominantly on the residential side. What are you seeing over there?
Yeah, I'm going to go with cautiously optimistic. We are starting to see or hear a little bit of slowdown occurring within the residential. I think that just relates back to the economy as a whole and whatnot. But I do believe we'll see the economy come around certainly by later this year, if not sooner. And I think that has a strong impact on the residential market specifically. So I think it'll be a good year overall. I just think we might be a little slow to start this year is all.
Brent, architecture firms are the first ones to kind of see at the beginning of a slowdown. You're our leading indicator.
Yeah. From an architect standpoint, I don't think it's looking as good. The economy overall in building, I think the construction industry. I was reading an AIA report that said that, and it depends on who you read, but anywhere from for 2023, 6% to 8% growth in construction volume, and that all sounds really good, except that when you look past 2023, it looks like it's going down from there. So. And we've actually seen our backlog starting to drop. Jeff mentioned backlog in the construction industry. Backlogs in architecture are starting to drop. And so I think some of that has to do with maybe less work and maybe expectations that things have to be done faster. And we have to survive with less of a backlog. I'm sorry.
If you read a bunch of the economists, and two of them wrote their predictions in our report, they tend to be all over the place this year in a way that I haven't seen before. And I like the fact that we kind of have a good, better, best scenario among the three of you, or a maybe better, best in terms of optimism. But it is going to be an interesting year no matter what. Let's go to the metal roofing market, Renee, and talk about that. I think I saw a press release coming out recently that the metal roofing market has increased to a 17% market share now. Is that going to continue? What's driving that share increase?
Yeah. So we do an annual study every year, and for the 2021 year, which is the study that came out last year, for the previous year, we did see a 17% market share within the re-roof market. So for us, that's big. That's our primary target and the primary audience for metal roofing. So we continue to see the market share trailing up, slower than we'd like, but certainly at a consistent upward pace. So that's been good. Going back to the, the question of optimism this year and whatnot, I think one of the things metal roofing has going for it is the demographic that we are aiming for or promoting to, in that, they're typically a pretty educated group of people. And so on that note, I think sustainability and environmental aspects of products are starting to take front and center a bit more than they have historically. And so I think that's part of my cautious optimism for this year, is I think despite what we might be bumping up against with economy and things of that nature, I think our demographic, our homeowners are becoming more educated, they're becoming more responsible, and all of those things that they're now focusing on speak very highly of metal roofing.
You said 17% share in the re-roof market. That's commercial and residential, correct?
No,
Combined,
we are
or just
strictly
residential?
yeah, we're strictly residential. So that's residential.
Thank you. And Brent, are you seeing changes about attitudes towards metal roofing within the design community? Are you guys speccing more metal roofing as you go along? Is there a different attitude about metal roofing out there?
Well, I think there's a couple of factors that, yes, is the answer. But the factors that I think start to play into that are that owners very often can't believe that materials wear out. And so especially when you talk about roofing, metal roofing is one of the longest lasting roofs that we can put on a building. I was actually on a job site a while back where we were looking at needing to do roofing repair on a slate shingle roof. Now, a slate shingle roof that was only 20 years old and should have a 100-year life. And I think slate roofs are beautiful. And when a roof goes on, so much is dependent about how well it goes on. And this particular slate roof wasn't put on well, and it is failing, even though the material should last for over a century. So I think that there are real avenues for metal roofing to make the case that that not only is the material long lasting, but how it is installed is a known quantity. There's a lot of metal roofing, a lot of metal roofers that know what they're doing. And I think this goes back into reconstruction in general. When you look at how much reconstruction we're doing, particularly in economies that are start to get tighter, reconstruction goes up. So things like repurposing buildings goes up, and I think that the metal roofing industry really needs to look at how they are proactive about seeing themselves as part of marketing to reconstruction. Even if a building didn't have a metal roof on it before, how metal roofs can be used in reconstruction. I was reading something that reconstruction in commercial properties was 38% of architects' business 15 years ago. Now it's 62% of our business. I mean, so reconstruction is just a huge factor. And, that goes into what Renee was saying about sustainability. We all know that reuse of a building is a sustainable thing. And I think that will keep growing.
That's a great segue for you, Jeff. You wrote an article in Metal Construction News last year that forecasted the retrofit market as outpacing new construction in a few years. What do you think that's going to mean for the metal component market? Brent outlined some of that, but
Yeah, Brent touched on it, and I thank him for his comments and guidance. The AIA continues to report that retrofit is a growing larger and larger share of the marketplace overall, and especially in this time with the Infrastructure Investment Act and Inflation Reduction Acts, et cetera. There's more and more emphasis put on the need for retrofitting the existing buildings and improving the energy efficiencies in the built environment. And I didn't write this, but someplace I read that retrofitting a building is more environmentally friendly, less expensive, and faster. than it is to build new, obviously. So, so we do need to take advantage of that. And what does it mean for our industry? I think it impacts our industry several ways. One, obviously, there's growth opportunity there. Metal has a fantastic message to share when it comes to sustainability and the opportunity to improve a building's efficiencies. Repurposing or upgrading the building envelope is a big part of that process. And metal has a proven history and documentation to show how it can help improve a building's overall energy efficiency. So that means that, we as an industry, there's going to be a need for a change on our marketing focus. Who are we reaching out to, and what is our messaging to those people? It also, I believe it means that there's going to be greater emphasis on looking at systems overall, the roofing and wall systems, as compared to the components that we sell individually today. We're going to have to consider and place greater emphasis on what is the performance of the entire wall and roofing system. And I think that will then help drive innovation to our industry as well. MCA is currently engaged in a couple of initiatives, working with the DOE, Department of Energy, on how we can develop systems that capture energy and then repurpose that energy. So I think it'll do all those things as we move forward.
Renee, you got both feet in the renovation market. So are you seeing kind of homeowner demands for metal roofing replacement changing, their motivations for changing, or what is their motivation for renovating a roof and changing from, say, an asphalt shingle to a metal roof?
I think it goes back to what's been shared earlier. I think initially, this my take on the industry, prior to getting into this role, it was more of an aesthetic, with some longevity ideas. Now I think that sustainability, the environmental friendliness, and even more importantly, depending on where you're located within the US and Canada, it's how that product performs in all these crazy weather related events we've been having. And, again, metal roofing just comes to the top in its performance in weather related events and sustainability, environmental, right? Like we're just ticking all those boxes. And so I think to answer your question, I think, again, the homeowners are getting slightly changing their views when it comes to which material they choose based on some of these more broad topics and important things in the market.
It sounds to me, what I'm hearing you say is homeowners are looking at sustainability issues a lot more than they used to. It used to be just aesthetics.
Yes, and I think we can think, Google and the wide web and the ease of access for information, because I can certainly tell you in the 6 years I've been in this role, the level of education or knowledge that a homeowner is getting and the conversations I'm having, I'm definitely seeing that play a role in them selecting metal roofing as well.
Before I turn to you, Brent, I want to remind our audience to post questions for the panelists here, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. You don't want to miss the opportunity to ask these folks questions. It's like free consulting services. Sorry, I think I just sold you guys out a little bit. But, Brent, you wrote an article for the State of the Industry report that titled simply Speed, and it engaged my brain in a very quick fashion. And it was about how every aspect of the construction industry is increasing in pace. And I want to talk about that among all of you, and start with you, Brent. How is this accelerating? What's it mean for the industry? What's the danger of it? And what are the opportunities that come from increasing the pace of everything from design through completion of a construction project? Brent?
Well, I think I think most people in the construction industry all think that we've always worked very fast, which I believe we have. But what I've been finding is that that things have in the past year, things changed so quickly. I mean, we in the past 3 years, things have changed so quickly. We simply seem to go from one problem to the next. And our clients always wanted things done before the next problem came up. And, right now, the next problem is an impending recession, whether it comes or not. So we find that our clients set schedules that frankly, we think are almost unattainable. And they were unattainable to us 3 years ago, but now we're finding that we meet those schedules. Otherwise, we won't have a job. So what we do differently is our studio works with an old school theory that people work on projects from beginning to end. And we keep teams, we keep teams relatively small so that architects can guide projects from beginning to end. Now we are changing that just a little bit to speed up our process, and we are swarming more to projects to get them out the door, because that's a client expectation. And so I think overall right now, in my very Iowa way of thinking about it, we need to make hay while the sun is shining. And because there's the possibility that the projects won't be there in the future. So from how I'm looking at doing things, I'm trying to get the most done possible right now. Now, I know that isn't too different than things were 5 years ago, but I do think that we see a future that has more unknowns in it now, and so getting things done becomes more important.
Jeff, I've argued that over the last 30 years, most of the major building product innovations are driven by energy efficiency or ease of installation. And that ease of installation seems to kind of fit in with what Brent is saying about the speed of construction. Are you seeing manufacturers and Metal Construction Association kind of change their attitude about products they're creating to get them out the door faster, to create products that can be installed faster, that do address this demand for increased speed?
Yeah, I can't answer that question specifically, Paul. I do know there's conversation about that. And as Brent has suggested, speed is going to be a factor, and it's going to affect manufacturers both on the supply side of raw materials, their manufacturing process, and then how do we assemble and bring these things to the job site so there's conversation around those topics at this point in time. I haven't seen, or I am not aware of any, significant change in process at this point in time. And that just may be because I haven't asked the right questions at this point in time. So,
Renee, you're in both camps. You have members who are manufacturers and members who are contractors. Are you seeing discussion back and forth between them about this kind of, hey, I need things today issue?
I certainly hear that from our contractor members, the desire to get product more quickly. Having come from the manufacturer side in a previous life, I think that's just inherently part of those businesses, and that process is always trying to find ways to streamline production to get product out the door more quickly. So I have faith that that's kind of a constant focus. Probably where I see it more, what I'm seeing more in the streamlining, at least what's visible to me, is going to be the ancillary products that are going in to support metal roofing going up on a roof. So, I mean, you walk around MetalCon or IRE or any of these other shows, and, you see these new tools that are coming out and these new ideas on underlayment or, various pieces of the system and how the system's put up. I've seen a lot of improvements in ease of use and how quickly things can get done. So I think that's an add-on as well. And then, I think in the residential market, homeowners always want everything yesterday. So kind of to Brent's point on the residential front is, especially if they've had the roof torn off their home, in a hurricane or, whatever the case may be. I think we've got a lot of impatience in the market. And so it does behoove us as an industry to certainly find ways to get to market quicker. One thing I would always caution our industry, and I think we're wise enough to know this already, but I'd feel bad if I didn't say it, is, a rush job very rarely is a good job. And so making sure we've got quality trained installers, to Brent's point earlier, that know what they're doing and can get it on quickly and efficiently. I think that's going to be key to the residential arena as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, because the biggest warranty issue you hear from manufacturers is an installation problem, and making things harder to install or trying to speed that is just going to create more warranty issues. And maybe that's where metal roofing and other metal components have an advantage over some of the harder things to install. Like you had said, Brent, slate is not an easy product to install. Is there one of the things I want you to address is there an opportunity here? And it's a really vague question. I recognize it, and I don't know whether there's an answer, but is there an opportunity for the industry to address this speed and fill a need, or even just change its messaging so it talks about this? And maybe, Jeff, that's more a question for you, since I know you guys are talking a lot about the messaging that's coming out from the industry.
Yeah, well, I think there is opportunity. If there's a marketplace expectation, we have to meet it, right? So there's opportunity in that sense. There's certainly opportunity, as Renee was suggesting, to look at how our products integrate into a system and how they come together. So there will be places where the industry is going to need to take action and step forward. But
I think one of the Paul, to answer your question, no. I'm being facetious, and we all have to change how we work, but I never want to change. But I think a different market will differentiate. It will differentiate products, contractors, architects. I do know that we had a few projects come in where we didn't believe that the schedules were achievable by our studio, and we said no. It's not that the owners wanted something that I understood why they wanted things done as quickly as they did, but at some point we all have limitations on how many hours we can work, or how well we can put a roof on, in an allotted amount of time. So I think some of this will be a differentiator between quality and speed, because like I said, we all believe that we've been working quite quickly. I believe I've been working fast my entire professional life. So, but I think it's important to understand that that we have to think about delivering faster, and we have to look for methods that can keep us doing our jobs very well and doing it faster. But like I said, I had a couple of jobs that they wanted too much too fast, and I had to say no.
There was a report came out of Stanford's business school probably 7 or 8 years ago that looked at productivity increases by industry from like late 60s, early 70s to current time. And the construction industry was the only one that actually became less productive during that period. And it's not through lack of technology or improvement or changes. I think part of it is the projects became a lot more complicated. The average size of a house was 1,200 square feet. Now it's what, 2,400 square feet. That kind of thing changed things. I want to kind of bridge the gap here to this next question with that idea in the back of your mind, that the construction industry is also kind of notoriously slow to adopt new building technologies. And there are some real reasons why. There are some liability issues. You know, a building doesn't last for, you know, if you make a new phone and it doesn't work out, it's just 18 months of, okay, crap, I got to get a new phone. But that building's going to be there for a while. And if it doesn't work from the very beginning, that's a huge issue. So going with what works and what you know works is a huge incentive for contractors, I think for designers, architects as well. Are there new building technology you see out there that are going to advance the industry that you think will get wide adoption in the industry? Brent, let's start with you on that one.
Well, I think from an architect standpoint and a construction standpoint, I think the technology, information technology, is going to change how we manage job sites. I mean, as simple as really using drones for more than marketing flyovers and things like that. I mean, we have started to use drones more heavily on some of our further away job locations, and we've come to the point where now we don't just say, oh, look at how cool this looks. We actually are we are using those images to really understand what's going on the site, what we should be looking at. And it's saving time, because it comes back to an economy that is short of labor, and we do have to become more efficient. So this goes back to the question before, you know, can we do things faster? Yes, we can, even though I said no, because I don't like changing how I do things. I would rather sit in a car for 6 hours and listen to the radio to get to the job site than to turn on my computer that morning and be there immediately. It's just a way of working. But I really believe that not only architects, but I know in the construction industry, they have a lot more tools to use as far as sensor data and things like that with job safety on job sites, and not being able, or not requiring to have people on site as much. And so I think that's something that everyone is embracing more and more, even though we don't change quickly, but we are changing.
Renee, are you seeing new technologies that coming down the pike, or technologies that have introduced that you think will get wide acceptance, and kind of, and it can be building technologies or just, you know, production technologies like drones or BIM or something like that?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll support what Brent was just saying, you know, within the residential arena, using drones as an example. I mean, they're used for roof inspections, they're used, you know, to assist in estimating, all of which streamline, you know, somebody actually taking the time to go out and get on safety gear and get up on a roof and do all that. It's streamlined and lessened the amount of waste that goes into a job. It's made it easier for them to bid. Just during COVID, the advances that came through COVID in areas such as sales showing up at the homeowner's house and having to sit and walk them through, you know, maybe a PowerPoint or an actual printed, you know, hard copy presentation. Now everything, I know a lot of contractors, they have iPads. They'll bring in 3 or 4 iPads. Everybody gets their own iPad. You can finance right at the table, on the spot, real time. So I think, you know, outside of the building technology side, the ancillary aspects of the process have certainly come a long way. And I believe we'll continue to see that get quicker and easier and for homeowners specifically.
That must have improved scheduling, and I think that my sense of what's going on in the industry is scheduling is a lot easier now than it used to be, which should make things a lot more efficient with the technologies you can draw on. Jeff, do you want to weigh in on that? My next question is for you, and changing topics a little bit, but I want to give you a chance to address this kind of new building technologies issue.
Well, I think they've covered it. I think the one piece I'd add on is, you know, from the installation perspective, you know, I have seen some prototypes of robotics intended towards to replace manual labor and be more efficient at, especially in the residential roofing sectors is primarily where, seeing, it all being done, by robotics, the installation of be it shingles or whatever. So I see a change there, as well as the overall building technology or information that energy performance, those type of things. So
the question, thanks, Jeff. The next question I had for you that I wanted to ask was about the perception of wood, and we touched about it at the very top of the discussion here, about the perception of metal building components in the marketplace, that the wood industry has been aggressive about getting a message out there of wood as a very sustainable product, and to some extent kind of putting the metal industry in a bit of a box that maybe it doesn't deserve to be in. What's the opportunity here for the metal component industry?
Well, I think,
go ahead.
yeah, and thank you. This is something I've been a bit passionate about. Yeah, the wood industry, and not just them, the concrete industry as well has been very aggressive in positioning themselves with respect to embodied carbon and their proclaimed advantages over metal as a construction material. And I think metal has a great message to tell, especially when you look at from cradle to grave perspective. And Brent talked to earlier about how long lasting metal is, and we've documented 60 years for metal roofs because those are the oldest ones we could find when we did the study. We believe it's much longer than that in actuality. So there's very few competitive materials that have that same type of overall lifespan. If you look at the carbon issue from the perspective of cradle to grave, metals performance is fantastic, especially considering with the recyclability of the product, etc. There are claims by other industries that they perform at a much higher level with respect to carbon emissions, but some of those claims are either incomplete, the assessments are, or they're being questioned in general as to whether or not they're overstating their performance or not by credible sources. So when you look at some of the messaging out there today, metal is the #1 enemy. I think as an industry, we're a bit under attack. And I think our biggest challenge today is we do not have a unified voice on this topic. Wood has come together to unify. Their message is consistent across platforms. The concrete industry as well. They've just announced a partnership with ICCES for the purpose of advancing codes and standards that promote the use of non-metallic building products. I didn't know that was a function of the Code Council, but we as an industry need to have a response, and we're lacking that today. So we need to bring together the various sectors and integers of the industry, update the information we have, and then take that message to industry and share what we know, because we do believe on a comparative basis we perform quite well.
Brent, to some extent, you are the target of these messages because you're the specifier and the first person on the front line who's deciding building products and where they're going to go where. What's your reaction to kind of the messages you're getting about embodied carbon?
I think the metal industry needs to do a better job at showing specifiers how metal is a good choice for the environment. So much of what we do now is based on sustainability factors, how we make a client happy, how we feel good about ourselves when we're done with a building and what we've done is very much related to the sustainability of the building. So what Jeff was saying, I think the industry definitely needs to make sure that it is putting information out there that architects and other specifiers can get their hands on and make good choices.
Renee, do you want to get your 2 cents in on this conversation?
A ditto to all the above. I agree with what Jeff was saying. I think as an industry, we have some work to do as far as getting a consistent platform, consistent message out there. So that's something we've battled a bit over the last few years, and yeah, so I agree with that statement.
I'll add in market research of 2 people, Brent being one of them. I talked with an architect in Toronto recently who kind of did a wonderful metal component residential retrofit, and kind of said the same thing. Why isn't metal getting more notice for its sustainability aspects? So I think maybe it's a great opportunity for the industry.
It is, and there is action underway. I'll just share. Obviously, the steel industry in the U.S. anyway is taking steps, and you hear their messaging that they're the cleanest steel on earth, but there's more work to be done. MCA is formed a sustainability task force looking at our industry, EPDs and LCAs. Those were all done in the mid-teens. We need to get that information. We need to expand the inclusiveness of the participants in that, and then we need to they're all working to develop comparative EPDs with all the building materials. But then we, as already stated, we need to have a collective voice on the industry's behalf to take to the marketplace.
I would just like to intercept there that I think that's from my perspective, that's one of the benefits of belonging to associations. We work very closely with MCA and vice versa. And NRCA, like there are associations out there, we are communicating amongst ourselves for the most part. I see a real step back potentially in that we aren't necessarily, we don't have involvement from all of the market, right? Like we've got, you get your 80-20 rule, we've got 20%. And I'm just spouting statistics. I don't know what the actual number is, but you get 20% of the market that understands the concept of we as an industry need to be solid in our stance and our communications. But then we've got 70-80%, whatever that percent is of the market that's out doing their own thing, and that leads to some inconsistency and some difficulty in getting that platform, as Jeff was speaking to, and that's where associations really can help out.
It is a little bit like working on a school project where 1 or 2 people do all the work and everybody else says, thanks very much for the A. Big shift in topics here. But before I shift over to the next topic, I want any final words, thoughts on that particular issue, what's going on with, okay. Perhaps the biggest topic in the construction industry is the shortage of skilled labor. It's maybe the biggest thing affecting the industry. Every time I look at an economist, they say something to the effect that the industry would have grown more if we had had more workers to work. But this isn't a new topic either. I'm fond of saying that I wrote my first skilled labor shortage article in 1992. So this is not new, but it is an ongoing problem. Jeff, I'm going to start with you. Have you seen ideas, solutions that can help the industry move through this huge, intractable problem, which is also a cultural issue?
And I think you touched on it right there, Paul. It is much bigger than just our industry. It is a cultural issue, stems, way back to the elimination of shop classes and everything else, and a belief or actions at the primary schools that, move away from the trades as an industry. I think it's not something we as the metal construction industry are going to be able to solve on our own. But, I do think there are things that we can be doing that help address this issue. And number one, we have to be sure that we create and communicate and publicize that, one, the trades are a viable career, our industry is a viable career, that we create career paths for people. We can show how it is a sustainable career and where they can make very handsome wages and have quality of life throughout. So that's number one. And then the trades as a whole, again, I'm for collaboration, need to come together and have coordinated effort here, because it is a sizable undertaking. I commend the groups in our industry that are taking actions, developing training programs, promoting those, creating those pathways to see how people advance through different levels of the industry and expertise, kind of an apprentice journeyman type approach. Those things all help address those issues, and I congratulate those that are taking those actions.
Brent, I think in this discussion, architects kind of get shoved to the sidelines and aren't invited into the discussion, even though you're affected by this as much as anybody is. What do you see out there?
I see cute cranes. On job sites, the thing that I have been most surprised by and somewhat entertained by is machinery that helps to make job sites more efficient with less people. And I can on some very small projects of ours, like $5-6 million buildings, to see these small cranes on these job sites where you wouldn't have seen them before, because there are just less laborers, and this isn't necessarily the skilled labor market, but the labor market of general laborers even is in shortage. So the use of cranes on job sites where you'd never see them before. And I went to a job site in Wisconsin one day, and I couldn't believe it looked like a toy. This small crane, and I could see how it would just change a job site immensely to have a piece of equipment like that on it. And it made me think, what else is out there that can make job sites more efficient with less people? I'm a sucker for machines. So a little shiny yellow crane was something that really stuck in my mind.
Renee, what are you seeing among your contractor members? I'm sure they're very vocal about this issue.
Yeah. I'll just to piggyback off of that. That makes me smile. Piggyback off of Brent's comments. That kind of teeters back to the conversation around, advances in the industry and what's being done to streamline things. And I think the labor shortage has forced our hand. Again, so, the little cranes that show up to the job site that are lifting materials up onto the roof instead of having, an individual climbing up and down the ladder, getting materials up there. I think there's a lot of that has happened because of the labor shortage. So I think there's some benefits, trying to be an optimist here. I think there's some benefits having come from that labor shortage. But from my perspective, in talking with our contractor base, I'm certainly seeing, having come through the last 3 years, there is a renewed focus on trades, more so than there was going into the COVID era, if you will. So I do think it's getting more attention. I agree with what Jeff and Brent were saying there. I think there is a renewed interest in getting, you don't always have to go to college. It's okay for your kids to go to trade schools now. We kind of, as a culture, have switched up how we look at that. I've been getting a lot of questions about training programs and a lot of interest from contractors that are looking to get into metal, but aren't quite sure where to go. And so again, kind of to Jeff's point, I have a training resource list that I've put together for referrals. I know as an industry, there are several training programs that are either already out there and or are being developed to help get people into the industry and upskill them, quickly. So I think there's stuff out there. It just needs to be communicated. But I do believe we'll start to see some of that labor issue start to trend away a little bit.
Yeah, and Paul, I just want to take a moment to, I congratulated the other groups that were doing it. I didn't want to shortchange MCA because MCA as well has its metal roof installation manuals. In fact, it's one of our most highly downloaded items off of our website, or it is the most highly downloaded one. And we've also been very active in working with other groups, including NRCA, the development of a pro certification program for metal roofing to again address that career path and skills development issues that we need to take on as an industry. So.
Brent, I think you struck a nerve with our audience. Somebody's already asking what the make and brand of that crane was.
I wish I knew that. I would like one at home.
It could change the nature of garden work, couldn't it? I'll round out that discussion by saying I think maybe the best thing that's happened to the labor shortage is the price of higher education. It's gotten to the point where people are going, well, maybe it isn't such a good deal. And that's kind of forced parents and kids to reevaluate the direction they want to go with their careers. So as long as the construction industry can provide career paths, clear career paths and good career paths, things could look up that way. Couple of final questions before we get off and turn to the audience. And this is for all of you. Renee, I'll start with you. You've got a crystal ball.
Oh,
What's
good.
the metal construction industry going to look like over the next 10 years?
Well, I'm very optimistic on what it looks like. Again, we've kind of touched on a few things, but I do think the story of metal roofing, the benefits that a homeowner gets from it, and everything from sustainability to performance and weather events, et cetera. I think we're going to start to see that message be absorbed a bit better. And as a result, I think we'll continue to see the market share for metal roofing in the residential arena anyway go up. I fully anticipate that.
Jeff, your crystal ball prediction?
Yes. Similarly, I think sustainability and resiliency are obviously both going to be big players moving forward, and metal has a great platform addressing both. I think our integration with solar and renewable energies is going to be drive opportunities for the industry, and then on the manufacturer side, continued consolidation and vertical integration, as manufacturers keep taking control of supply chain and distribution channels.
Brent?
I think this goes back to speed. I think metal is one of those materials, and metal systems are something that can happen quickly, and I believe that will continue to be something that our clients demand. And from an architectural standpoint, I believe that things like pre-engineered metal buildings, we keep getting better at doing them in an architectural way. While there are many buildings that are don't need special design, that they might be more than one off. I believe that custom pre-engineered metal buildings are becoming something more and more sought after, and I think that as I've worked with people in that industry, people are much more accepting of making special buildings that are of a kit of parts like pre-engineered metal buildings are.
I have one more question here, but we have just a few minutes, and I'd rather have the audience ask some questions. And also, as I look at the question, I feel maybe I was being a little too negative when I posed it. So I'd like to skip past that if you guys don't mind. So if you don't mind, let's get to some of these audience questions. One of the folks says here, the lack of skilled labor and trades is going to continue to drive construction to modular construction. And do any of you panelists have experience in modular, and is it a positive or considered an innovation? Is it a positive experience or considered an innovation? I think is the way it should be read.
I think it can be. I think
yeah.
it depends on the application and other factors, but I have seen some of that myself, kind of that trend towards some modular aspects of building, and yeah, I think it has its place.
Brent, have you done anything kind of on the modular front?
Yeah, and
I'm sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna kind of echo that. Well, I don't have specific experience in that industry. I see it as an influencing factor in the future. I referenced earlier about how we bring our products to market was intended to refer to that. So I do see it becoming an influence as we move forward.
Brent?
We've had a lot of starts and stops with pre-built component buildings. I do think it will become more and more of a factor, but I would say that I've been saying that for nearly 20 years now. So it will happen. It's just how long will it take?
And I think there's I think there's also a lot of kind of vagueness about the language being used about this modular construction versus panelized construction versus other different things. And I think we end up lumping different kinds of construction into one bucket too.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a clarification. Another question for you, Renee. Do you have any data on the share of the metal roofing market that's steel versus aluminum versus premium metals, natural metals like copper and zinc? And are those changing?
I do. I couldn't cite any specifics off the top of my head without pulling up the latest data, but we do collect that data annually. And just trying to go from memory, I don't know that we've seen any big swings, one versus the other. I think they've held fairly consistently year over year as far as their percent of the market.
Do you publish that on your website? Could somebody?
We publish highlights of the annual study. The details are typically only go to members of MRA.
Yeah. There's another person asking, I'll read this: changes in safety and regulations add to the need for more on-site workers and paper pushers for the increase in workers on the site. So this is maybe more of a comment. What used to take one now takes three. So safety and regulations are increasing the need for workers, I think, is this person's comment. You guys have any response to that? Do you see much of that? And especially, I think roofing regulations on the residential side have changed so much for safety in the last 15 years.
I mean, I don't have any experience to say yay or nay. I will say, again, just walking around some of the latest MetalCon show, there were a lot of innovative safety equipment and accessories and things of that nature. How those play into the number of people that actually have to be on the site, I'm not sure. I haven't really heard much about that.
That's why there's more cranes.
Yes, cute little crane.
I'm sorry. When you said that, Brent, I first thought of the bird. I don't know where. I didn't know where you were going with that. One person Brent would like you to share that stat you mentioned earlier regarding the percentage of retrofit projects you're getting now in architect versus compared to previously.
Okay, and I'm not sure if I can do that off the top of my head. And so that was a recent AIA study that I was looking at, and I might be able to tell you where I saw that. There's a article. It was a consensus construction forecast put out by the AIA. And those numbers varied by different categories. So I think I had quoted the commercial category. But if someone wants to just Google consensus construction forecast AIA, and I'm sure they can come up with all the numbers.
Right. Let's take one last question, and it's a trend question, which we haven't really addressed very much, and I'm glad to get this one. Somebody's asking, and I'm going to broaden this a little bit. Do you foresee increases in the specialty finishes prints in the market? And I think that, Brent, you're on the front lines of what owners are asking for as far as finishes. Are you seeing any changes in that demand, those trends?
Well, I think our owners are very often a little bit behind where architects are, because if they haven't seen it in magazines, or a lot of them don't know about it yet. So I think that that a lot of that those increases for specialty finishes actually is driven by architects in a lot of ways. We're always looking what we can do better and different than someone before us did, because there's nothing more disappointing than designing a building and having it nearly all done, and then have a building down the street that just started using the material that you thought you were going to be the first one in the neighborhood to be using. So,
Renee, what's the trend you're catching in finishes?
Yeah, it's going up. I mean, I to Brent's point, as awareness grows and people realize what's out there from an availability perspective, I think we'll see it grow. I think they're great. I come from a background where I used to work with a company that did them, so I'm a little partial, but from a residential perspective, those types of products can allow metal roofing to get more closely the aesthetic of other materials, whether it be a wood shake or a, what have you, a slate roof, etc. Those different paint finishes and coatings and whatnot can play a huge role in getting the aesthetics that a homeowner wants. So I think as people start to become more aware of those, I do see how much of the market, I don't know, we'll see, but I do think there's going to be an interest, a growing interest.
Jeff, final comment.
And I would just, yeah, I would, on that particular one, I do think there'll be an increased use of not only the printing, but texturing and perforation, especially as you see metal being used more frequently in a wall setting and in interior residential walls and other forms, or interior walls in general. I think you'll see greater creativity along those lines, so be it printing, texturing, perforation, etc. So
we see a lot of projects at our sister publication, Metal Architecture, and I would say there seem to be kind of two paths that I'll weigh in on this a little bit. One is we're seeing a lot more use of natural metals, Corten, zinc, copper, predominantly because it has that natural feel to it, and people like the way it patinas. But on the other end of the spectrum, especially in the educational sector, we're seeing really bright colors being used, and those aren't specialty finishes, but they do kind of fit into that kind of trends that we're seeing for finishes. Thank you guys very much for taking the time to share your thoughts and ideas with us. We really appreciate it. Kaylin, I think you have a final thing to send off to our audience there.
Absolutely. I'll keep this nice and quick. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We so appreciate you being here. A big thank you to all of our panelists today, Renee Ramey, Brent Schipper, and of course, Jeff Henry. Finally, I want to thank Metal Construction News and Paul Deffenbaugh for being our partners in this presentation. Make sure you go and get the latest copy of, or the January copy of Metal Construction News to see a lot of this information shared in print format as well. Thank you all for being here with us today. If you have any further questions, do not hesitate to email me, and I'd be happy to help out from there. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day. We'll see you at the next MetalCon Live.
Thank you all for joining us. Bye.
thank you all.